Is Drake MAGA? I don't know. That's a question that seems to be on a lot of people's minds since a recent post from the White House, as well as this post from his right hand, DJ Academics, in response to criticism re Drake's silence on that post. But seriously, there are an increasingly larger number of people from what I've observed in Drake's orbit as of late that have weirdly right-wing views, be it Academics or Aiden Ross or XQC. And it's led me to want to have a conversation about this very topic and go over the various things Drake has done or said or has aligned himself with that have caused his views, political views that is, to come into question, which is why I've invited on music writer and co-host of the Rap Latte podcast, Touré, to have this conversation. And here it is. Let's go. Hi, everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. And as I said, I have my guest here, music writer Touré, co-host of the Rap Latte podcast as well. And we are going to talk about whether or not Drake is MAGA now, which seems to be like a charge and an accusation that is coming up on social media more and more lately. And, you know, I've been hearing inklings of this, which I think have gone like a little bit too far, dating back to the battle back in 2024. And, you know, I didn't really give it much credence. I thought it was like just kind of another thing that people threw at him as a means of kind of like putting him down, because there are some criticisms of Drake, as hard as it is for some people to believe, that I don't think are that valid. I think they're valid criticisms. I think they're invalid criticisms. But like, given the culture and conversation that's kind of, you know, gathering around a lot of his music and his fandom as of late, I'm a little more on, I guess, like the fence with it. I'm a little more in the maybe pile. Where are you at currently in terms of this?
As far as the MAGA Drake stuff?
The accusations that he aligns with MAGA, identifies, has shared views.
So it took me a minute to fully unpack this. And I think I partly sort of nailed it in talking with you about this offline.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit yesterday.
There's not a political Trump Drake. I don't think he knows or cares anything about Trump policies, couldn't name one, has no idea really what it means to be a Republican or a Democrat, right? Like, I don't think he knows or cares about any of that. But there is a cultural Trump world that exists around the lionization of Trump and the sort of replication of his personality, the way he does things, that is very manosphere, that is very incel culture. And when you dig into that, like young Gen Z, aggressive, conservative male, Aiden Ross, Nick Fuentes, Andrew Tate, that class of person, it seems like Drake wants to be down with them, wants to be accepted by them, and is already making music that is talking about masculinity and women's place within that, in a way that they like, in a way that they understand, in a way that they're like, yes, women are interchangeable, therefore our happiness, when they are saying no to us, that is a problem. This is a guy, correct me if I'm wrong, who supported Tory Lanez, right?
Like, yeah, he did support Tory Lanez.
I mean, that's a manosphere sort of position, right? Like that the man is always right, the woman is always wrong. So I see Drake in that sort of era. And when he's like close with Aiden Ross, friends with Academics, who is very openly MAGA, inviting Shane Gillis onto his album, when Drake could easily get Kevin Hart, could easily get probably Chris Rock, any number of black comedians. But then you're like, who is he trying to appeal to when he's hanging out with Aiden Ross and Shane Gillis and like this sort of a person? It reminds me of the kid who like could hang out with the black kids or the white kids, and he's hanging out with the black kids, and the black kids are like, are you really like down for us? Like, are you really gonna be here? Like, for the long haul? And he's like, yeah, I'm down with you guys. And then one day he's hanging out with the skinheads because they know he's also white. And like, oh, That's who you are. And like, if you're a rapper who could be cool with the White House being aligned with you, what the fuck are you doing? Like, what kind with this fucking White House, this anti-black MAGA racist White House? You're cool with them co-opting your album cover and adding their MAGA iconography to it? Like,
right.
Wow, that's crazy.
When we were having a conversation about this yesterday, I feel like where I mostly landed was on, for Drake and for those around him, like DJ Academics, who recently, went at Jeremy Hecht. Shout out to him for, posting a tweet kind of, calling into question whether or not Drake should try to, and even in a very quiet way, prevent the White House from posting anything that would have to do with him or his music. I mean, after all, you might have caught on Twitter as of late, whether it was Drake or whether it was UMG, there was like a really broad takedown of any clips of songs from the ICEMAN episodes, from the music videos, from the tracks remixes too, like, accounts that were getting a lot of juice and a lot of attention off of like a bunch of different like versions and edits of tracks, had a lot of stuff taken down like overnight. It was like very, very quick. And I imagine with the same quickness, like the White House could be prevented from using any kind of like copyrighted material around what Drake does. But very quickly, DJ Academics, Drake's right-hand man, that's what he has referred to him as, came out to attack Jeremy and essentially say, without going over the whole phrase, that, they don't need to go at the White House because they're essentially giving them promo.
Right.
And they're done with the woke bullshit. The woke bullshit is over. We're done with the woke stuff.
And that's a MAGA way of talking.
It's a MAGA way of talking. But I think like knowing sort of like Drake's or presuming Drake's ambivalence to all of this, like you were saying earlier, I feel like that's where I was mostly landing. But when I thought about the dynamic and everything that's going on more, I sort of considered that like politically right now, despite the fact that the Trump administration and the right wing are who is currently in power, they're not very popular at the moment. It's like record low sort of reception numbers and everything like that. And if Drake wanted to have like a W that could be read across like multiple lines of culture on the internet right now and in music circles, he could easily come out and denounce this and just be like, well, fuck that. I don't want to have anything to do with this. It's like there would be so many people reacting to that very, very positively, except the manosphere people that he has dug himself in with at this point. And I have to presume, and maybe it's not a MAGA thing, but he sort of knows where his bread is buttered in terms of like the ideology that those who mess with him right now most share and who they fuck with the most. And even if he doesn't really care all that much about Trump personally, I think he understands that on some level, the Aiden Rosses, the XQCs, DJ Academics, who has been pictured with him multiple times, Trump, that is, them and all of their fans and a lot of the guys who watch them, they all mess with Trump. And I think Drake sees a lot of community and safety in the circle that he's created around him right now. And a lot like Trump, he cares a lot about loyalty. And for him, like these people are who have been loyal to him thus far as of late. And I think he just wants to kind of pander to them and make them feel like he agrees with them.
There's a lot of like in Drake victimhood, even though he is multi-millionaire, super powerful within his world, which is the same sort of grievance of Trump of like, I am a victim of the world. We need to fight back against the world that is out to get us. You are one of the people controlling the world before you even became president, before we got to these shitty albums. Like you're already one of the big dogs in the industry. You are not a victim. You are not a victim of the women that you are encountering. You're not a victim of others, but like you keep acting like you are, which is this very Trumpian sort of exchange. I think that Black people are understanding that there will be moments of oppression, that the struggle is hard and you need to stick with it. And you don't sort of just capitulate because it is hard to be on the team that is being oppressed. But that is part of what our history has been. So at a moment like this, where it is tough to be Black and you feel the oppression, you feel the attempt of erasure, by the most powerful people. Someone like Kendrick is going to sit in that and respond in a way that is like, revolutionary, that is understanding of like, we are being oppressed and we will rise again. Drake just wants to be down with the winning team. I don't think that he actually cares about anything around Trumpism or even Trumpism culturally, but he wants to be down with the winning team. And it is offensive to many of us who actually care about these issues and actually care about Black progress. I don't think he feels a deep allegiance to the African American community to be like, I'm going to stand with you in a difficult moment like the Trump presidency. And he sees value for himself, as Kanye does, in aligning with the team that seems to be winning. I don't think Kanye also could not name Trump policies or could not explain coherently Trump politically, but Trump culturally seems to be this thing that they want to align with. And they seem like, this is cool. This is larger than life. This is about wealth. This is about doing whatever you want to do in life. Nobody tells you what to do. It's kind of gross. And it's disappointing. Kanye seems far deeper in it than Drake, but Drake is absolutely plunged into this.
Well, I mean, in the way that he's been operating and in his lyrics too, he's showcased that he has like a concept, an idea of some of these feelings or some of these phenomena that you're talking about when it comes to either oppression or when it comes to racism and fascism, but he points them in a much different direction because on Janus STFU, there is that bar where he says, is it the fair skin of the Jewish roots? Why people want to not see me on top of that mountain like I do the dew. So, I mean, like he's aware of what you could say is Nazi rhetoric, but he's essentially saying like, well, the Nazis are the ones who actually sided against me in the beef. And I mean, how do you read his view of that? That he has a concept of Nazism, but it's like people who are, I guess, kind of jamming to not like us.
I mean, I think it's just a weird wordplay, word salad, because there's not some sort of anti-Semitic thing against him. We are checking his card because we can see the whiteness. We can see the tenuous relationship to Blackness. We can see all these things at the jump. So like, we're like, are you really like us? Are you really down with us? But it's not an anti-Semitic sort of like dislike. I don't think that is part of this. I don't think that there's a significant Nazism in Kendrick's camp or in hip hop at all. And I feel like Drake really probably has no political consciousness, whatever. What he says about DJ Khaled and Palestine, I don't think Drake is pro-Palestine, and whatever he may or may not have signed or said in the past, I don't think he really gives a shit. I don't think he could explain one tiny bit of it. And if somebody could probably talk him into being pro-Israel in 4 minutes or talk him into being pro-Palestine in 4 minutes. I don't think he has any. So it's just like, here's a way to attack Khaled. Here's a thing that I can say about Khaled. But like, Drake's not truly pro-Palestine. Like, I don't think he has any thoughts around that at all. So I find that almost even worse that you're trying to use the big knock against Khaled, that he's not saying anything that would help the Palestinian people. But you don't actually care about that. So you're just making it just rhetoric. You aren't actually pro-Palestinian. So how are you pointing a finger? Oh, so he should be more so than you because he's Palestinian. Okay, but it's fucking genocide. And you don't really give a shit, but you're going to use it to try to score points on a rap song against somebody who's actually Palestinian? Like, what?
Yeah, and I guess that kind of like also brings up a question that I didn't really think about in reaction to that line, because clearly due to his Palestinian roots, Drake thinks that on some level Khaled does have a responsibility to people that he identifies with. And I don't think Drake feels that same sort of responsibility in like a broad sort of like communal sense. And I think that sort of like comes up in certain lines when he is going at Kendrick's activism, which I mean, you know, I've been critical of that. Other people have been critical of that before. Nobody who actually pays attention to his music and follows the way that he moves thinks he's perfect. I think we read a lot of positive things in what he does and the things that he says, but like, again, by no means perfect. And even he himself does not claim to be perfect, obviously. But in the process of saying, well, he's kind of a fake activist, or he's just, you know, being an activist for brownie points, he throws out these lines that kind of read to me not just as like ambivalence toward politics, but almost in a way to where he thinks like caring about politics or putting politics in your music is like really lame. And it's almost like he's too cynical to do it, which is like why I think he says things like, well, you're rapping like you're trying to free the slaves, or your music just exists to make white people feel guilty. And that's the only reason that you do it, which to me is kind of crazy. That's like a very insane statement, not only on Kendrick's part and the people who are black and feel like they have a personal connection to his music based on the things that he raps about, but also like, how is anybody who's not white and a Kendrick fan supposed to take that line? Like, you're telling me this entire time while I was enjoying this man's music, the only reason he made it was just to make white people feel bad. It had nothing to do with communicating with me personally.
I mean, Kendrick is quite obviously black centric and thinks about black people and blackness first, which
it would be pretty egotistical for me as a white guy, even in a negative sense, to hear his albums and be like, yeah, this is so about me. You know, it's like he's really telling me off right now.
But I'm certain that Drake is white centric and isn't able to understand that or critique that in himself. It exists in himself as something that he is not trying to root out, that he is aware of, that he is fun. So it's just this overlay that's how it. So he thinks Kendrick is doing it to stoke white guilt because Drake does things thinking about how will white people respond to this, right? So it's projection. It's Trumpian without meaning to. He thinks that Kendrick does that because he does that. But Kendrick absolutely does not do that. And Drake absolutely does. And this is part of my deep problem with Drake, is that there is a white centrism to Drake and his music that to me represents a sort of gentrification of hip hop. Like if Drake continues to be successful and we get more people like that, this is the beginning, the end of hip hop, of like sort of the Elvisization of rock, which ruins it for black people. And we have to go find something else. Like that, he seems to me to be like a major step toward the end of hip hop, because it is the watering down of hip hop. It is the whitening of hip hop. It is the enshittification of hip hop.
That's not a bad framing, not one that I disagree with. But I especially find this argument funny given Kendrick's most recent releases, because not only were there a lot of decidedly not political songs at all on GNX, but you know, the thing is he was playing directly in a very localized sound that not a lot of white people, even casual hip hop fans, are super deeply aware of or super ingrained in. It's not like he's pulling on or calling on something that, you know, white people are going to be instantly like in tune with in terms of like their familiarity with certain eras of rap.
I mean, to me, if you're a good rapper, everything you do is political. It's not just that you specifically mention the president or the governor or the mayor or the laws or whatever, but like existing in a loud and thoughtful, conscious way as a black person with a point of view about the world is inherently political. We don't generally know what the point of view on the world of singers are, right? They're generally singing about love and relationships and themselves. Rappers are constantly telling you, this is how I see the world. This is how I exist in the world. So there is something inherently political about their existence. Kendrick is this sort of celebration of what it is to be from Compton, from a black community, from a black neighborhood, and to be deeply black centric within that rising up from LA gang culture and all these sort of things, to become a father, to become not a husband, but a committed partner. So many beautiful things. And Drake represents to me, sort of whiteness invading hip hop, eternal boyhood, sort of a corniness, like a lack of identity, a lack of Americanness, just sort of a tenuous relationship to the Black culture that makes hip hop what it is. So everybody, De La Soul is political, right? They're not talking about politics the same way that Jay-Z's talking about his relationship to the state and the drug war, but they're suburban Black guys who have a wide array of references that is inherently political, who are never worrying about money, where the rapper who's talking about, we had to eat jelly sandwiches, that is inherently political. Drake is a little bit trickier to put on that sort of continuum because, he exists so far outside of it, Canadian, mixed, right? Like half Jewish, all these sort of things. But also because he tells us so little that's honest about his real life. All right. And all he really talks about now is women and money. So then I'm sort of landing you in a manosphere, right? As we started the conversation, in a manosphere context. So now I'm like, you're kind of like, that's just kind of whack. Like you're just the black guy who wants to hang out with the racist adjacent white guys. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
The way I kind of read it, and to be a little, I don't know, charitable, at least in terms of one era of Drake, like you say, being political in your music or having some kind of like social position in what you do doesn't always come down to mentioning the president, obviously. And I think there is like a case to be made for at least like the early years of Drake's catalog in terms of the cultural shift that he was a part of, or at least like, represented in terms of being a rapper who was also very obviously and openly and heavily into R&B, into slow jams, into being sort of vulnerable in your songs, even in such a way to where it was unflattering toward him, in the way that he sort of like, would lay out kind of his interactions and the ways that he had been burned with women and so on and so forth. But unfortunately, over that course of time, I think like, hip hop broadly was like tearing him apart and like repeatedly emasculating him. And, music fans across the board, Drake, the type of guy, memes were like abound during that point in time. Yeah. And I think like, for a long time, despite the commercial success he was seeing, what he really did want was like not only that legitimacy, but for people to like acknowledge his manhood in a way. And I think like things have kind of aligned to a point where he's kind of found himself in this circle to where he finally has that. Like he almost has, I think like a Venn diagram circle type overlap with like an Andrew Tate these days, like the very same types of like crypto podcast bros who would sign up for one of his like courses would probably vibe to the new Drake album too, because it's all grievance. It's all throwing shots at your, haters and so on and so forth, and paying for women's attention because, that's like all they're good for, and money is power. And now that Drake finally has that kind of validation, I think he doesn't want to let it go.
And I also think about his lack of personal development, at least as far as the person we get to see on the records. Because the records that the shitty records he just released, most of them could have been retrofitted onto almost anything of the past 7-8 years. Like anything could have been transported back to those For All the Dogs or whatever the fuck. And, Certified Lover Boy, whatever, could have been pushed up here. Like there's no development in his perspective, not really much of a development in his vision of the world or of rapping or of music. And the people who are streaming at his level, Beyonce, Taylor, like these are artists who are specifically making significant changes from album to album, right? Beyonce in particular, The last, what, 4 or 5 albums are distinctively different thematically. You could not take any song from Renaissance and put it on Cowboy Carter. It would immediately sound like an Alien, right? And anything on Cowboy Carter would sound Alien on Lemonade. And Taylor, I imagine, is probably doing the same thing. I can't sit through those albums. Drake is not developing and changing over time. And a lot of people are talking about this. Is one of the major critiques of him at this point. And I imagine when he was 29 talking about this shit, he seemed like the older brother who was, having wild situations to a lot of the audience, and like, okay, they were with it. Now, if you're like 15 to 22, 23, Drake has got to look like a parent. Like not your parent, but somebody else's parent, like your peer's parent, still talking about situationships and smacking that ass till there's a cheetah print. My wife and I were like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Look, if I think if you want to get down and smack that ass until there's a cheetah print just for a bit of fun, you can. But I think the proof is, again, look at a record like Mr. Morale. Not only how much of a deep dive personally that record is, but also the literal acknowledgments toward therapy and emotionally unpacking that are all over that album. Meanwhile, Drake's record opens up with like, hey, I'm seeing my therapist, but like I'm kind of distracted because she's hot. And I'm not really taking this whole situation too seriously. And it's like, that's where mentally he's at, So, and again, they're both around the same age, and one of them is just distracted by the therapist's boobs. And the other one's actually like, no, I kind of want to like undo generational trauma.
I mean, he's such a Peter Pan. He's such a grown-up boy. And it's like, it's tiresome. It's tiresome. I mean, like, I find him boring. I find this look of the sweatsuits and the track suits with the braids, and like, that is so young. Like, really? That's how you are presenting yourself to the world right now? I mean, like, he is so deeply corny. And what I mean by that is a lack of alignment with who you really are. So there's a schmaltz to you it's not funny. It's not cute. He loves to be the butt of the joke. It's kind of weird. Like I just saw his new Kevin Durant commercial where he's doing the same thing that he does in like the Chris Brown video where he's like being the butt of the joke. And he's
right.
like,
He's like the corny comedy relief.
Yes, he's on the edge of like playing it as gay. It's not, but it's like close to that. Like, oh, these are fire. And if I close my eyes, he sounds like my daughter, because it's like the things that he says. I'm like, those are the things that my 17-year-old daughter and her friends say. And it's not a gender joke. It's more of like an age. Like, he sounds like a young Gen Zer. And I'm like, well, but you're 39, dude. The fuck?
Yeah, it's like depending on where he is and what he's doing, it's like there's little different roles that he likes to play. He's a mob boss, he's the Iceman, he's this, he's that. But then also for a commercial, he's like, oh man, these are going to change the game. These boots are awesome, so on and so forth. And, he's just like a silly little guy. I guess whatever sort of like the moment calls for. I saw somebody, and this, this was just a silly joke, silly timeline joke. Somebody put out there that like, it's my theory that Aubrey Drake Graham is an actor and Drake is just the character he plays, just like has different seasons kind of laid out for this character, and he just kind of indulges in it. And I will admit, I do think like this recent, I mean, it even boils down to, and I think it's a little copified, but lines on the record where he's like, well, maybe I was just meant to be the villain. it does read a little bit as like wrestling heel, you know, he's like, well,
Sure.
you know, music and hip hop and everybody, they want me to be the bad guy. So I'll be the bad guy, you know, I'll be the Iceman and I'll just fulfill that role and I'll just succeed off of it.
You know, I'm just sort of thinking about this as we're talking. That part of the problem is Drake. Like I think his flow is terrible. I just saw somebody, and flow is the prime thing that I listen to hip hop for. Before I fully understand words that you are saying in the verse, I am consuming the flow and your relationship to the beat, and that is my favorite thing about hip hop. And when you are a quote unquote rapper and you can't give me great flows, a great relationship to the beat, rather than a tenuous relationship to the beat, I have no use for you. Somebody just said Drake sounds like he made a voice note that was accidentally stretched over a beat. And I'm like, yes, that is exactly right. So that bothers me. So much about his music, it bothers me. His writing is so terrible. The attempt in this moment to say he has a deep line because there's a duck and a bill and Duckworth and male ducks are drakes, and it's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. There's no entendres there. It's all word references and puns, but it's not actually like poetic triple entendres. Like it's so pathetic. But part of the problem also is the Drake fan. The Drake super fans are all problematic. Mal, Ack, they're all so repellent that it makes liking Drake that much harder because they're carrying the water for him, and I find them so disgusting.
I saw this I saw this clip of the latter of the both of them. He was talking about how every green light in Toronto, every light and every traffic light was turning green when he was riding with him in Toronto. And it just like, it read to me like North Korean propaganda. And it's like the dear leader, every traffic light turns green from him. The dear leader, he came up with the first octuple entendre and thwarted all of his enemies in an instant.
I mean, we were told that he was hosting the World Cup halftime. That was presented as news. That was not true at all. So you just lied. Nobody leaked it. You're not Shams. You just lied. You just made some shit up. And we're all supposed to just keep moving. Ack has been wrong so many times. I don't believe him as a source. If he says something, I need somebody else to co-sign it because I don't.
I know that's why I said Iceman was coming out when I did not know Iceman was coming out, because everybody who follows Drake and is like a part of that camp and was a part of this like ongoing effort to keep the album hyped up and in people's heads kept saying every week or every other week, oh, the album's coming out. It's coming out soon. Watch out. Iceman around the corner. It'll be here before you even know it. And it's like, you guys keep implying it's dropping this Friday when it's not. I know it's not dropped. Okay, fine. I'm just going to say it's dropping this Friday. I mean, everybody else is. Why not just get in on the fun?
I mean, you know, I don't know. It's fucking ridiculous. They are a big part of the problem, just like Trump fans are a big part of the problem. They're both disgusting.
All right. Well, Touré, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me about these MAGA alignments, and we will link to your stuff and Wrapped Latte down below. Thank you.
Thank you.